Hello everyone, welcome to the information age. With so many people at your fingertips, providing so much information, how do you know what's true and what's not true? Not a week goes by that I don't get a question about how to tell who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth about spiritual information. Most weeks I get questions about false prophets. So for that reason alone, I'm going to do this video on false prophets. A false prophet is one who falsely claims the gift of prophecy or divine inspiration, or who uses that gift for evil ends. Here we run into our very first problem. When it comes to spiritual teachers or people who claim to be prophets, oftentimes a whole group of people claim that they are a false prophet, at the same time as a whole other group of people claim that they are the very truest prophet that exists. I am no exception to this rule. In fact, there are people who will think that just my stance on this particular subject alone is more proof that I'm a false prophet. So what exactly is my stance on false prophets? There is no such thing as a false prophet. The united consciousness that people call God or source of the universe, you cannot be separate from it because you are it. Every being on earth is an extension of what you are calling God. Therefore, everyone is a prophet, whether they know it or not. God is not being selective about who it inspires or who it talks to. What language does this God consciousness speak in? A great many languages. But most often it speaks through the language of synchronicity and reflection. What you are hearing from all people who profess to have the ability to convey source consciousness to you directly or speak from God is a translation. And all translations are an interpretation. Interpretation is subject to perspective, and all perspectives are different. Perspective does not equal truth. No teacher that says that they represent the absolute truth is helping you, because in asking you to adopt their truth, they cause you to stray from your own truth. They wrap up truth for you in a tiny little box and hand it to you so you will never have to feel confused or uncertain enough to think for yourself. I can do no other than any other spiritual teacher or prophet does, which is to offer you my perspective. Try that perspective on and wear it around. If it doesn't fit well, take it off. If it fits well, keep it on. Or else take only parts of that perspective which I'm offering you, or which anyone is offering you. If parts suit you, keep them. If parts don't suit you, discard them. If I was the only God there is, I would send down many false prophets to confuse people. I would send down false prophets by the thousands so that people would become so disillusioned by teachers that they would begin to look for their answers within themselves. It is the false prophets that cause us to set ourselves free from the powerlessness of having to go to church to access God, or having to talk to a priest to access God, or from having to get our answers from someone else. All prophets are true and cannot be false because they give us the opportunity to know ourselves and know our truth completely, and that is the doorway to self-trust. If a prophet does not teach self-trust, you can be sure that they are coloring the information they are receiving with their own shadows, which drive them currently towards control. But that is teaching in and of itself. All prophets teach self-trust, whether they are directly teaching it or whether they are indirectly teaching it by providing you so much contrast that you are the only thing that you have to hold on to. It is not your job to find a static truth that everyone's going to conform to and agree upon. You're never going to accomplish that particular goal. And if it is your goal to get everybody to conform and agree to one perspective, it's because you need validation. The only reason we need validation for something that we believe is because we don't believe it's true yet. Your job is to find and to own your own truth. Your job is to know your own truth. Nothing more and nothing less. As humans, we need truth. We desperately seek it out. We need it for our sense of safety, our sense of security, in the same way that a small child clings to their blanket at nighttime to keep themselves warm. We are out there in a sea in this world, convinced that the only way that we're going to be safe and happy long term is if we know the absolute truth. We can't stand the idea of being wrong. We are convinced that there is no difference between being wrong and being forsaken. We are convinced that there is no difference between being right and being loved. Right and wrong will only ever be a matter of perspective. A person who once said that the earth was flat was correct from their perspective. Standing on earth, the horizon looks flat, and so from that perspective, the earth is in fact flat. When you change perspectives, the earth is not flat, it is round. And so only when you change perspectives does the previous truth become wrong. The person who thought the earth was flat will only change their truth if they change their perspective. We are all searching for the ultimate perspective, which is in fact the collection of all perspectives. If you want to know the truth is more close to what I've just said, that all perspectives are true, and that if you put them all together, you end up with the ultimate perspective or the ultimate truth. The perspective that Teal is a fraud is as true from the perspectives that certain people hold as the perspective that Teal is a true prophet. You need to treat all things on earth, including teachers and the things that specific teachers teach, as ingredients. Ingredients that together form the perfect cocktail of your specific life. Allow yourself to become flexible and change over time, because your perspective and therefore your truth will change over time. If you do not want mint in your cocktail, don't put it in your cocktail. If you do not like affirmations, don't put them in your cocktail. If you like lemon, put it in your cocktail. If you like the idea that you are part of God, put it in your cocktail. I want you to start to think of life like an enormous game of Go Fish. For those of you who have never played Go Fish before, basically your prerogative is to collect from the other players a group of specific cards containing fish on them, so that you make a perfect match. Start to treat every being you encounter, human and non-human, as if they are holding a deck of cards, cards which will add to your particular hand. Be on the lookout for what cards these beings have to offer. It is your prerogative to collect from them the cards that make your deck more complete, knowing that one day you may let go of cards that you once treasured because they no longer make your deck complete. Your prerogative is to remain open to recognizing those cards that are meant for you. Now, I can't stress this enough. Every single person that you come into contact with, or non-person that you come into contact with, does have a card for you. The trick is to recognize it. Now, sometimes it's difficult to recognize the card that somebody is giving us because it's what I call a not card or a surety card. What that means is, by interacting with somebody, you may be more acutely aware of what you do not want, and therefore more sure of what you do want. That means you've been handed a surety card, or a not card. People who fear false prophets distrust themselves. But more than that, they fear malevolence. For that reason alone, it's important to understand that evil does not exist within this universe. There has not ever been one malevolent intention on the planet Earth. Let me show you why. The person who murders is not evil. The person who murdered somebody because they thought that the murdering of someone would make them feel better. So the ultimate desire, the motivation behind that murder was to feel good. Sounds mighty malevolent, doesn't it? Behind every single action lies a positive intention. That doesn't make the acts wrong or right, but all hateful acts are misguided attempts to carry out a positive intention. The ultimate example of what people consider to be a false prophet may be Jim Jones, leader of the People's Temple. Long story short, plastic cups, Flavor Aid packets, and syringes littered the area where 909 bodies were found at the largest revolutionary suicide in modern history After Jones urged his followers to die in support of apostolic communism. Don't believe for a second that Jim Jones thought that he was causing people harm. He thought that he was helping people. He thought that the only way for them to be free was to die. This example does not show us just how evil people can be. It shows us just how dangerous perspectives can be. It shows us how crucial deep questioning is, and it shows us how important it is to remain flexible so we do not get hurt as the result of fixating on a specific truth. It shows us, above all, how important it is to put your trust in yourself and not in a teacher or leader. To use an aggressive metaphor, by taking all that a person says as truth and abandoning your own discernment in favor of any prophet, you may end up swallowing the poison with the Kool-Aid. If you are concerned with false prophets, it has nothing to do with the prophets themselves. What it has to do with is the fact that you distrust your own discernment. Because distrust, self-distrust to be specific, is such an issue for people who worry about false prophets, I want you to watch my YouTube video titled How to Trust Yourself. People who fear false prophets don't trust their own ability to discern. Because of this, I'm going to focus for a time on tips which will help you get in touch with your own ability to discern. Now, of course, the first tip is going to come in the form of a question. Why don't I trust my ability to know true from false for me, or right from wrong for me? Tip number 2 is to get in touch with what is true for you. Now, this begins with a step of bravery, because in order to ascertain what is true to us, we have to be willing to be incredibly brutally honest about what's true for us. Now, keep in mind that what is actually true for us, we may not want to be true for us. We may not think it is true for us. So, first, I want you to get into a space of openness. Openness to the idea that you may not know anything about yourself right now. You are a blank slate. Now what you do is you imagine that through the center of your body is like a rod. That is your core. It's running straight through the middle of your body. Now, when you ask yourself a question, your truth will show up the closest to that particular rod. So in essence, all we need to do is to feel for the truth or the emotion or the answer that is closest to this rod. For example, if I were to ask you, do you love the person you are married to? You might automatically want to say yes. After all, this has to be the truth if you are married. But if you check in with the answer and the feeling that's closest to this internal core rod, the answer might be no. You can practice on yourself. Collect a bunch of questions and ask yourself, or have someone else ask you the questions that you've collected. And in order to answer those questions, you have to go to that space mentally where you're thinking about that internal rod and answer from that space instead of the space out here, which is a mental construct. Tip number 3, stay open when it comes to truth, especially your truth. And also, stay open enough to truth that you can consider the counter-argument. New perspectives, which are even more comprehensive than the ones available today, are coming to fruition every day. Next time you see a group of little kids pass you, let yourself smile and know that the perspectives and truths that they might offer one day are going to be more amazing than what you can possibly imagine today. Science reveals new things every year that revolutionize our understanding of the world. If we stay committed to the truth of one religion or one teacher or one scientist, we will miss the opportunity to expand further. If we stay committed to the truth that the world is flat, we have no room for the truth that the world is round. It is best to hold firmly to your trust in your ability to discern, and hold very softly to any and all specific truths that you currently hold. Be open to your opinion changing tomorrow. Tip number 4, when it comes to our logical processes, use inductive and deductive reasoning together. Work from the bottom up and the top down to test truths. An example of deductive reasoning, which is working from the top down, is where we begin usually with a general idea or hypothesis, such as, I create my reality with my thoughts. We then narrow it down to even smaller things that can be tested, like I can manifest $100 this week. And then we work on that and find proof for that, and the outcome either proves or disproves the original theory. An example of inductive reasoning would be, I found $100, therefore I create my own reality. We need to use both styles of logical reasoning when it comes to mentally aligning with our truth. Tip number 5. The very best teachers will always turn you back towards yourself. They will be the very most concerned with helping you develop self-trust and helping you develop discernment. They will also be open completely and welcoming of questioning. They will not punish you for questioning them. They will welcome any kind of thinking which progresses your life. They will not expect you to take their word for it. Tip number 6. Test things out for yourself. If something appeals to you, try it on and try it out and see if it works. Don't consider anything true unless it is proven true for you specifically. For example, don't take someone's word for it that doing inner child work is the way to solve emotional wounds. Try inner child work out. See if it heals something inside of you. Work with it for a while, asking questions that may come up during the process, and get second opinions, and decide for yourself if it solves emotional wounds or not. Tip number 6. Develop your intuition and trust your gut. When it comes to developing your intuition, getting in touch with your feelings and your emotions is perhaps the most important step that you can take. It's also really important that you're doing an ample amount of shadow work, because your suppressed fears and suppressed negative emotions will cloud your intuition. For example, we could have an intuition that someone is unsafe to be around, and on one hand that could be true, but on the other hand we could also be reacting to them because they smell or look like someone who hurt us once. So it has nothing to do with intuition, and it has everything to do with unhealed aspects within ourselves. That being said, when in doubt, when you're in the heat of the moment, always trust your intuition and your gut no matter what, because you can always question it later. Most often you'll find that when you trusted your intuition and you followed your gut instinct, you were right upon reflection. There is no such thing as a false prophet because all people are prophets. All people have different perspectives, and all people who claim to be prophets are interpreting the information which they're receiving from the universe, information which you either resonate with or you don't. Because all people are prophets, the most important thing for you to do in your day-to-day life is to get in touch with your internal prophet and to make the voice of that internal prophet the most important one that you live by. Have a good week.